This is Sarah, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you about this week's sponsor, Favor. Favor Inc. is a statewide family-led nonprofit 501c3 organization that is committed to empowering families as advocates and partners in improving educational and health outcomes for our children. Favor is the Connecticut state organization of the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Favor offers a single place for families with children who have medical, mental, emotional, and behavioral health challenges to find information, assistance, and training. To find out more about Favor, please go to favor-ct.org. We are grateful for our opportunity to work with Favor as a sponsor, and now on to the rest of the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I have a very special guest. I'm so excited to have her here. Her name is Betsy Wurzel, and she is from the podcast Chatting with Betsy. She's the host of Chatting with Betsy. She's a family caregiver to her mother-in-law, her husband, and her son. She is also a former nurse, and she is also the creator of #Kick Alzheimer's Ass movement. So, hi, Betsy. How are you doing? And welcome.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. How are you doing this Halloween day?
I am fantastic. I am so excited to record with you. Our stories have a lot of similarities, which is why I'm so excited to just have you on our show. And Halloween's my favorite day. So happy Halloween, everyone. Even though when this airs, it'll be past it, but that's okay. I'm just excited to have you here. Would you like to further introduce yourself to my audience?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to share my experiences and Matt's journey. I might get a little verklempt because tomorrow is our anniversary, but I am Betsy Wurzel. I was always been a caregiver because I was a nurse, and my son Josh is on the autistic spectrum, and so I'm still a caregiver. And my mother-in-law, she had Alzheimer's. My dad had it. My husband Matt had early onset, and that was a battle. Learned a lot from that experience. And I am host of Chatting with Betsy, a Passion World Talk Radio, where I talk to many different people about all kinds of topics, so people can have a better life, to give people resources that I wish I knew about while caregiving, and even just general life issues. And I'm also creator and founder of #Kick Alzheimer's Ass movement, a support group. You don't have to have Alzheimer's. It's for any dementia. It's for caregivers. You don't even have to be a caregiver, but nobody should ever walk this journey alone during caregiving or after.
Agreed. And you do a lot of work, obviously, as a family caregiver, and you have experience as a nurse and a nurse's aide. Do you want to talk about how that healthcare experience helped you with your journey of caring for your mother-in-law and your husband?
Yes, I think I was blessed with intuition, and I think nurses have it. You just know. I'm also an empath, so I just know things. I can't explain it. And I knew something was wrong with my mother-in-law, and she even told me. But to convince Matt was another story. And I knew with my dad that he had dementia before he was diagnosed. And I had intuition with Matt. I said, Matt, I believe you're going to get this early. I didn't know at that time you could get it in your 50s or even younger. I had no idea. And I was unfortunately right. And in dealing with Matt especially, I feel this way, Sarah, when you are married, and we're married for a long time, you are connected, right? You have this deep connection. You can't explain it to anyone. You know that there's something wrong. And I fought for Matt from diagnosis to getting proper end-of-life care. They didn't believe me that the medication wasn't working. They didn't believe me that he was dying. I knew he was dying. I knew it. But can I explain that? How I knew? I can't. I just knew.
Yeah. And I think that like you said, having a connection with and it maybe it's not always a spouse. It could be a child or a grandparent or a parent. I knew, you know, it relates in a way and it doesn't in another way because my grandmother's not my spouse. However, I have a strong connection with her or I had a strong connection with her. And I pretty much knew when she was going to pass that it was going to be that day. I knew before that day that it was going to be that day, even though there was no specific indication. And some of that was my medical experience of, the person in this can go for anybody with medical experience who's a caregiver and has a strong connection with somebody. The person hasn't eaten in so many days. They haven't had anything to drink in so many days. I know with my medical background that that's not good, but also I know in my heart, in my gut, my instinct that connection, like you said, your intuition,
Yes.
sometimes you just know when you're a family caregiver that something is wrong or that this is it or whatever it is. And I applaud you for sharing that because a lot of family caregivers don't want to say, they don't want to go against the experts sometimes. And I'm not saying we always fight the experts, but when we know in our hearts and our guts that we're right, that's when we need to advocate and share, hey, something's not right. This is what's happening. This is what I believe is going on based off of my feeling and my knowledge. And you had both.
Yes, exactly. And even with Josh, as a baby, I knew at 6 months something was amiss. I just had that feeling. And when Josh was a little older, we went to Jamboree and he didn't enjoy it. He cried through the whole thing. He couldn't take it. And he was delayed in doing things. And of course, every child is different, but there is also the normal age to do things, and there's the delayed. And Josh was globally delayed. I knew something wasn't right, and yet I was told as an overprotective mother, I don't know what I'm talking about. Josh is lazy. I love how they blame the person, right? They blamed me. They blamed Josh. With Matt's diagnosis, when he went to a neuropsychologist and he was tested, he was blamed cooperative. I don't know why they do that, but you're right, Sarah. We have to advocate, and that's why I say education for a caregiver is so important, because when we are educated, we can talk, we know what we're talking about, we know what to expect, and it makes us better caregivers and gives our loved ones a better life.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%. And there's a lot of caregivers who don't have the luxury like you and I have had of having that medical background. And another thing that I had going for me when my son's autism diagnosis, my sister had a background in early childhood development as a special education teacher. So I had her, even though I knew something was off, because again, as a mom, again, back to you just know, something's wrong. And as a mom, I knew my son was not hitting milestones like my other son was. And I knew he wasn't hitting milestones like his peers were. And my sister very calmly had to say to me, I think you need to get your son evaluated. I didn't tell my family that we already had the appointment for the evaluation. You know what I mean? And that's just, it's all relative in that, in how you have to advocate. And you and I went through our child's diagnosis at very different times too. My son was diagnosed in the past 5 years. Things have changed so much from now to, I want to say it was 30-ish years ago that your son was diagnosed.
Yeah, over 30 years ago, because Josh is 38.
Yeah.
So it was when he was younger, but when I didn't get a diagnosis proper until he was 13. Until he was 13 years old. because I was told multiple things. He was mentally retarded. He was, hyperactive. He was put on Ritalin. He didn't need to be put on Ritalin. This kid didn't move. He wasn't hyperactive physically, maybe mentally, but not physically. And, when we see an injustice, Sarah, we have to speak up because things won't change unless we do speak up. And I did speak up for sure. That hospice knew that I had a big mouth.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you had to do. And, you're advocating for your son and everybody who's done that before me and my son's diagnosis 30 years ago, 30 years prior to my son's diagnosis. Their advocacy and their hard work in fighting for early intervention and early diagnosis and early detection, it made it easier for me to get the diagnosis I need. So your work wasn't, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this. Your work wasn't done for nothing. Your fight wasn't for nothing. Your fight was to make it easier for the next generation of kids. And hopefully my fight and my battle makes everything easier for the next generation of kids that come after mine, because, autism, Alzheimer's, none of this is going away. This is all here. It's here in the world, and there's not really much we can do about it, but advocate for the people we care for.
Yes, exactly, Sarah. And that's why I showed Matt's journey. This is why I filed complaints with Medicare and the New Jersey Department of Health. My mom would say, stop talking about it. Matt's gone. It's not going to bring him back. I said, I'm not doing it to bring him back. I know he's not coming back. But what about the next person? That's what I'm doing it for. Because I've said this and I'll say it over and over again. I will speak up for those who can't and for those who won't. And for the next person in line, nobody should ever be treated the way we were in a hospice situation. That hospice was a home hospice from hell. Nobody should experience that at all, where you get aggravation and not support.
Yeah. Can you share more about more details about why that was so difficult, or what was so difficult?
Yes, because they didn't believe me that Matt was dying. They didn't believe me that the medication didn't work. And I kept saying it's not working. Social worker, who I would say is a witch, to put it mildly, she was very nasty, very sarcastic to me. She told me I called up hospice too much. And I said, I'll call up as much as I want till there's a solution to the problem. I'm Matt's advocate. And she said, accused me of not giving medication correctly. And I had to put her in her place. I said, I was a licensed practical nurse. I know how to give medication. I said, you need to change your attitude and your tone and how you're talking to me, because you're talking to me like I'm stupid, and I am not stupid. So stop talking to me like that. She said, I'm not talking to you like that. And I said, I think you are. I said, I'm telling you the medicine's not working. Why are they giving more of the same? That's insanity. And I kept telling her, and I even told her that Matt had a headache. He said, as plain as day, I have a headache. She had the nerve to tell me he couldn't have a headache. Why do they think people with dementia don't have pain? And this is crazy.
I know, exactly.
Matt fell. He fell, and I had to wait till Josh came home to get him up. I called up the hospice. They wouldn't come out. They wouldn't come out. And they didn't even follow up. I called up the next day. And I said, Matt's agitated. He fell. There was no follow-up. So they told me what to give him. I gave Matt exactly what they told me. Matt talked that whole night, fell out of bed. That was his last night home. I called up the hospice, and I said, the medicine didn't work. Matt talked all night, and he fell out of bed. Is somebody going to come out and assess him? The nurse had the nerve to tell me, I don't know. Can you believe that? She said, I don't know. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to call up your regional director. I'm calling up Medicare, and I'm going to complain. And I said, and I will call you up every minute until you know what you're going to do. I said, because I need help. I have chest pain. This man needs help. He's my husband. I'm his advocate. He's dying. He's agitated. Medicine's not working. He needs help. And she goes, don't call those people up, Mrs. Sloan. Sloan's my married name. And she goes, I'll call my nurse manager. He was taken to hospice later that night. And I told our son, I said, Daddy's not coming home. He's going to go to his heavenly home. Okay. They thought he was just going up for a medication adjustment. But I knew he went up there to die. And I told Josh, Daddy's not coming home. He's going to go to his heavenly home. And he had a one-to-one sitting with him because he was so agitated. And they said to me after 2 days, now we see what you're talking about, Betsy. Why? Why did I have to be that aggravated? I called up the director of the hospice. I told her I wasn't happy. And so she wanted to meet with me, and I met with her. And I told her, I'm not happy. This is unacceptable. And she had the nerve to tell me, I'm sorry, Betsy. Someone apparently dropped the ball. I said, well, my husband's not a ball. He's a human being. Would you want your husband treated that way? I know you wouldn't accept it. Nobody on this floor would accept such treatment. Don't expect me to accept it because it's not acceptable. The nasty social worker had a meeting with me at the hospital, and I told her, I said, Kathy, you need to listen to Caregiver. If we tell you our loved one is agitated, in pain, they're dying, you need to believe us. I said, I'm telling caregivers, we're not taking this crap anymore. You need to listen. We know what we're talking about. And I said, why wasn't anything done? And of course, she was sarcastic and said, well, when I met with you at your house, I didn't just go to Starbucks for coffee. I called up the team. I said, well, why didn't they do anything? She said, I don't know, but I did my job. I said, well, I'll remember that when I go to complain to patient advocate. She said, go ahead and complain. I said, I will. And I did.
And I think, I think that you had every right to. You recognized that your husband was in pain, in that he was not tolerating the medication, and that he was dying, and that all of these claims were dismissed. And, unfortunately with Alzheimer's, we all know death is inevitable. But the point of hospice, the whole point of hospice is that you shouldn't be dying agitated, uncomfortable, or in pain.
Exactly.
You can't always change the timeline of someone's life. You know what I mean? It's right. When it's their time, it's their time. But that's the whole point of hospice, is to keep a person comfortable in the end. And I know that medications, and I'm not a medication expert. However, I do know that certain medications, like Ativan is a big one, you can have adverse effects to it. I know a lot of people who have taken Ativan to calm themselves down, and it really made them more agitated. And you see that a lot in dementia cases, where maybe that's not the best medication for them. And I don't know if that's the medication he was on.
Yes.
But
yes, he was.
It was okay. That's just an example. And that's just me taking life experiences that I've had in healthcare and seeing people who were given Ativan, and then all of a sudden they were crazier on the Ativan, or more agitated, or just, and that's a common hospice medication. And for a lot of people, it does work, but for a lot of people, it doesn't. And so, I think it's so important for clinicians, for nurses, for doctors to listen to family members when giving medication to people, because you just don't know. In Ritalin is another medication that you mentioned, that my son was on Ritalin briefly, and he was like amped. He was like 3 times more out of control. We find that any medication that's prescribed to calm him down, he tends to get more agitated and more just escalated, more hyper and more active, and just more escalated and more agitated on most medications that are prescribed to calm him down. So, knowing that information is so important for family caregivers, but also so important for them to advocate. And there's other medications that could have been prescribed to keep him comfortable. Increasing a medication that's not working isn't the answer. I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Betsy. How long ago was this, if you don't mind me asking?
3 years ago.
Really?
So, and I just could not believe that the social worker had the nerve to say Matt couldn't have a headache. It's a Seroquel, giving him noises in his head. And he was on Seroquel and Klonopin. They could have adverse reactions too.
Exactly.
Everyone's different. And the home hospice nurse, I told her Matt was dying. She said, no, he's not. He's walking, he's talking. And I said, I'm telling you, he's dying. Not everyone fits a textbook picture. Think outside the box. And I think, Sarah, that hospices better wake up, because the younger the person with dementia, they may not be in bed terminally agitated dying. They could be walking around and dying. Yeah. And this is going to be a whole new thing. And I hope they hear me, because it's going to be a whole different picture with younger onset. I mean, my husband was 56 when he was diagnosed, 66 when he died. But you have people in their 40s, even in their 30s, being diagnosed. They may not fit a textbook picture.
Yeah.
And, to be told that someone can't have pain, I told her. I said, who are you to say that my husband couldn't have had pain? Do you know what a dying brain feels like? I suffer from migraines. I could just imagine your brain cells are dying. Your head must hurt. I mean, I just thinking that would make sense. But not to be believed. And then this crazy hospice chaplain, she was supposed to come to my house twice to meet Matt. She didn't. And I met her in the hospital. She came into my room, and I said that I am very upset because I thought Matt suffered unnecessarily. And she had the nerve to argue with me and say, well, Matt's not suffering now. I said, of course he's not. He just got shut up with morphine and whatever else they gave him, Valium. And she had the nerve to argue with me. They even had the nerve. This is kind of funny now when I think back at it. It wasn't funny 3 years ago. Another social worker called me on Christmas Eve day and said Matt will be going home on that weekend. I said, I don't think so, Mary. How can he be going home? He's still on IV medication. She goes, oh, and he's still agitated. Oh, we're going to put him on medicine by mouth and we'll monitor him. I said, well, you let me know when that happens, because I will monitor him myself. And I feel that if he is not safe for discharge, I refuse his discharge. She said, you can't do that. I said, try me. Oh, yes, I can. I know his rights, and I will call it Medicare, and I will slap a fine in this hospital. I refuse his discharge, not safe. She said, well, the doctor has to sign it. I said, I don't care what the doctor has to do. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. She said, calm down, Mrs. Sloan. No, I can't calm down. And again, they didn't see that he was dying.
Yeah. And like you said, early onset Alzheimer's presents different from regular Alzheimer's or regular dementia, where you can be very able-bodied with early onset, and with the presentation being so different. A lot of times caregivers aren't trained enough. I mean, more professional caregivers aren't trained enough in early onset and how it presents so differently than more late stages. You might not have the level of hearing loss or eyesight loss or the lack of mobility or the slowing down. You can be 50 years old and run a marathon runner and have early onset Alzheimer's. And that's going to and be very physically healthy. and your mind not. And that's going to present a whole level of differences in needs and differences of care and in differences of disease progression and differences in how treatment should and can be given. And I personally feel like there's just not enough education on early onset Alzheimer's still. I feel like there's a huge lack, like in healthcare workers, for the most part, know that it exists. Family caregivers, people who've been affected by it, know and understand that it exists. But I still feel like there's such a lack of like clinical information on it. And, there really just needs to be more. There needs
Yeah.
to be people who specialize in early onset, not just geriatric, late geriatric, 90-year-olds with Alzheimer's or 80-year-olds with Alzheimer's, but, your 40 and 50-year-olds. There needs to be more research done in that field. There needs to be more clinical research. There needs to be more just evidence-based, like physical caregiving research and more just solutions for family caregivers, because early onset Alzheimer's is in a lot of ways worse than Alzheimer's. Both are brutal. All dementia is brutal. But the younger you are when you get that diagnosis, the more years you have shaved off your life, the harder it is for people around you to believe it just because you're so young. And it's just so much. I personally feel that it's more brutal.
Yes, it is, because you're in the prime of life. Matt
Exactly.
was 56. He still had at least 10 years of work that he could have done. And, you can't drive. You had to get services. You had to be put on Social Security, disability. And I don't know what people do when they're in their 40s, how they qualify for like senior services. Something's got to be done, definitely, because it's going to be an epidemic. More and more people are getting diagnosed younger. But 12 years ago, they didn't believe that. They said, Matt was too young. I was too young. He can't have it. And he did. And yet his company doctor, who didn't see any test results, knew that he had dementia, suspected it. She was hoping it would be the type that could be reversible due to a vitamin or thyroid deficiency, but she feared it wasn't. And she was right.
Yeah. And you have experience as a caregiver caring for your mother-in-law also, who had Alzheimer's, and you said your father had Alzheimer's. Did you have any overlap caring for your husband and your mother-in-law at the same time?
No. My mother-in-law was diagnosed in 2000. And at that time, I didn't even know about Alzheimer's, never heard of Alzheimer's. It was not taught when I went to nursing school. It was called other things. No information. Couldn't get much information. I didn't know about sundowning, hallucinations, paranoia. I did not handle her hallucinations well at all. My mother-in-law died in 2006. Matt was diagnosed in 2010. But looking back, he started, I'm going to say in 2007, 2008, showing signs.
So you had just finished that journey and it kind of started all over again. But you had the few years of that, but you also had the overlap with caring for your son on the spectrum as well. And how did you manage the caregiving overlap with caring for people with different needs?
Josh is great. I'm not just saying that because he's my son. He's just a good-hearted, compassionate person. And he was great with his grandma. And with his dad, it was a little bit of an adjustment because, they don't like their routine changed. But when he knew he had to do things for his dad, he did it. And he was wonderful with him. Josh basically needs for me to cook for him, manage his finances, and he can't live alone because he lacks the critical thinking skills. So it was tough, but Josh and I were a tag team. It was just him and I taking care of Matt.
Yeah.
And thankfully, where Josh worked, Josh is a bus aide. They let him not work in the afternoon, and he just worked in the morning towards the end of Matt's life. Matt was put on hospice.
That's wonderful that he was able to support you and help be there and help take care of his father through this, because people who have kiddos on the spectrum who might be more severe or might require more help, they might feel really, really overburdened. So I'm glad to hear that Josh was able to help rather than be an extra person that required a significant amount of extra care with daily living. Like, you didn't have to dress Josh. You didn't have to, yes, you had to cook for him, but you didn't have to worry about dressing him, or, he was able to work a little bit. He was able to stay with his dad and help and support. And that's amazing. That must've been a blessing for you in a way.
Yes. And I also have to add, and I've done shows about this on my own show. Children, I say, are the hidden casualties on the war on dementia. We need to let our children vent, and that it's okay. Keep those lines of communication open. You don't want to close communication with your children, because where are they going to go to? Out on the street to their friends, and they won't get them the advice that you would give as a parent. I let Josh vent. If he said he hated changing his daddy's diaper, he had Alzheimer's, I said, that's okay. I don't like it either. Who does? I let him go out. I wanted Josh to have fun, to have a life. So he continued to go to the movies and go to his buddy night. I would never have taken that away from him. Yeah. I said, somebody in the family needs to have fun. You go ahead and have fun for all of us, Josh. When Matt died, it was quite an adjustment for Josh. And then readjusting to Daddy's not here. And it was rough, a very rough time, because Matt died in January of 2020, and then everything's in March. So just when Josh needs support, everything's taken away from him. Yeah. No job, no buddy night, no social interaction. And our kids on the spectrum, people with special needs, they like that routine. They need that routine for comfort, and it's taken away. We can adjust, and it's hard for us. So when someone has a disability, it's even harder. We made it through. I did not like, and I'll tell your audience, please do not tell people to be strong. Please don't tell people that when their loved one is dying or they died. We don't have to be strong. We've been strong. Josh was strong. And I would tell people, don't say that to him. Don't tell him he has to be strong for me. He doesn't. And I don't have to be strong for him. We've cried together. I still cry sometimes. It's okay. We're human beings. We're not robots.
And I just want to repeat that really quick. Don't tell people they have to be strong when they're grieving.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it one more time. Don't tell people they have to be strong when they are grieving. Let people grieve the way that they can. You know what? I agree with that 100%. I think that teaching people, instead of you have to be strong, that it's okay to feel what you're feeling, and it's okay to express it, as long as you're expressing it in like a non-violent way or a non-harmful way. If you want to cry or scream or punch a pillow or whatever, fine. As long as you're not hurting someone else in your expression of grief, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. And you know what? I highly recommend grief counseling. Josh didn't want to go. He didn't feel comfortable talking to anyone but me, but I went. I still do. I highly recommend counseling during caregiving and after. There's nothing wrong with that. And hey, if you got to take an anti-anxiety or an antidepressant, then do it. And nobody should ever judge anyone for going for counseling or taking medication that they need. Because you know what, Sarah? You know this as well as I do. Life throws you a punch. You don't know what life has in store for you. Do not judge, because you don't know what's going to happen to you. I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm not saying you, Sarah. I mean your audience.
No, I agree with that. And again, we share that on Caregiver Chronicles all the time. If you need medications, take them. Look at like I know it's a little bit off topic, but look at Kanye West right now. Like not all the stuff he's doing, like the craziness. The guy needs medication and therapy. And look at what happens when you don't get it. You kind of go off the rails. Take your meds. If you're prescribed meds and you need to be taking them, take them. If you're having a reaction to them, advocate. I don't feel right on this med. Go to therapy. Huge advocates for all of that here on Caregiver Chronicles.
Yes, that's good. And you know what too, Sarah? People, when they say, oh, I have to be strong, so they stifle down their feelings, and it comes out to bite them in the rear end, because you're going to end up losing it. You can be destructive. You could get diseases. You could get complications from holding in your feelings. We need to just acknowledge our feelings and validate them and go through the pain. We have to sit with our own crap sometimes and sit through it and go through it. You don't get over someone's death. I'll never get over losing Matt, but I have gone through it, and I have integrated my grieving with my living.
That's awesome. No, and Betsy, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I appreciate you talking about it. Another thing I want you to talk about a little bit is Kick Alzheimer's Ass movement. What is that?
I'll tell you how I came up with that name. I was in a very dark hole. I even had thinking about, and I don't know why, suicidal thoughts, how the railroad tracks felt where I worked, summer versus winter. Now, I never would have taken my own life. I never would have done that. And I don't even know why I thought that. That scared me. I didn't want to face what was coming down. And I said, either I'm going to kick Alzheimer's ass or it's going to kick mine. And I chose to kick it. So that's why I named my group that. And I wanted to help people have a place where they could come be educated and be supported and not feel threatened that they will be bullied or judged, because we need to be educated and we don't need to be someone judging us and when we vent.
Yes, absolutely. Especially when you're venting about caregiving, and sometimes that can be so hard to say, I had a bad day with mom because this kept happening, or this, and you'll have so many people who, especially on the internet, who will be judgmental or won't get it or will be mad because you don't like the situation you're in. And sometimes you can't change the situation you're in. We all get stuck. It happens. And I really love that. And I love that movement. And also I want you to talk about chatting with Betsy. How did that get started?
Yes, that is funny. Now that's a funny story. I never thought in a million years I would do public speaking, folks, because I'm really very shy. People don't believe that, but it's true. I would go in my car and show pictures of Matt, and I started doing videos, raising awareness and early onset, talking about caregiving, because I thought nobody would listen to me anyway, but people did listen. And I always wanted someone from a radio station to hear me, and lo and behold, Jeannie White, who's station manager, Passion World Talk Radio, saw one of my videos. She contacted me. She interviewed me on her show and asked me to speak regularly, weekly on her show. Then after 13 months, she said, Betsy, you should have your own show. And I was like, no, I can't do that. She said, yes, you can. So I started interviewing caregivers. And then I went on Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO, would send me press releases to interview other people. And she said, Betsy, you need to get out of your comfort zone. I know you can interview other people. And so I started interviewing all different types of people. And Chatting with Betsy is to provide people with resources so their life can be better, it's to help people. And I want people to know they're not alone in how they feel. We all feel that we're alone, and we're not, but we're afraid to say how we feel because we're afraid about being judged. And I interview people from all walks of life. And, everyone has a story, and we need to let people share their stories to help us. We learn from each other, and we're all connected, really.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like you said, we're connected and sharing your story. And that's a lot of that is Caregiver Chronicles mission. And you and I have some overlap in our story, as I've cared for family members with dementia, not my spouse, fortunately. But my grandmother, I worked as a nurse's aide as a teenager. You were a nurse's aide. You were a nurse. I was a medication aide. You have a son on the spectrum. I have a son on the spectrum. But we have different timelines in a similar story. Not everything's the same, but different timelines in a similar story that overlap. And that connection, that it's priceless. It really is. In you've been through your things, and you're still going through your things, and I've been through and I'm going through my things. And how many other people out there have overlaps with both of our stories in one way or another, and in other forms. And it's just, like you said, sharing your story lets other people feel less alone. And I couldn't agree with that more, because every time I talk to somebody with some similarities, I always feel validated. I always feel refreshed. Yes, there's huge differences in our story, but there is some similarities. And there's things that we've both witnessed that it's just validating. It's just so validating. And it's so important for the mental health of especially family caregivers, who a lot of times struggle with isolation. Yes. And, this is just another way to combat isolation, which I personally believe isolation is a huge factor in burnout, in caregiver burnout. I think isolation always exacerbates it. There's really just such there's not enough emphasis, I think, on caregiver isolation. We talk about burnout so much, and I just don't think we talk about isolation enough and how to combat it, because there's no answer. The answer is to find friends. Where do you find friends when you can't even leave your house because you're always taking care of somebody? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's true. And way before COVID, I did a video about isolation and abandonment. And I'm a Jersey girl, so I'm very blunt. And I'll say it here. Shame on the friends and family. Oh, and if you belong to a church, synagogue, or temple that abandoned the one with dementia. Shame, shame, shame. This is when people need you. And how dare you run away? People are afraid of dementia. It's so, it breaks my heart, and continues to break my heart, when people are isolated. And, the world got a taste of isolation during the pandemic. So I hope there'll be more compassion to a caregiver, because even without a pandemic, a caregiver is isolated. They just can't go out with their friends. They have to plan it. They have to have a sitter. They have to have someone watch their friend. It can't be spontaneous. And next month, actually, it'll be November, is National Caregivers Month. I'll suggest to your audience, help a caregiver. Send a text. If you're making a casserole, make another one. Put it at their doorstep. If they have children, take them out for an ice cream or a movie. Just it's not rocket science to get in touch with the caregiver. And I have to say, my son, he cracks me up. Josh, I said the mouth of babes. In church, some guy said, Josh, I'd call your dad up, but he won't know who I am. And Josh said, well, Bill, it's not rocket science. You call up, you say, hey, Matt, this is Brother Bill. How are you? So my son, who's on the spectrum, is telling somebody how to communicate with someone with Alzheimer's. That is priceless. it just doesn't take much. There's going to be more caregivers. And, there's a saying, I forgot exactly how it goes. If you're not a caregiver ready, you will be one, or you're going to need one. Educate yourself now, folks. Alzheimer's is the number 6 killer. Right now, there's no cure. Educate yourself, because you're going to know someone who has it. 1 in 3 people are getting diagnosed every 60 seconds in America, maybe around the world. Mm-hmm. This is not some fly-by-night disease. Alzheimer's is over 15 years old, no cure. Yes. And, I'm very passionate about it. I get verklempt, but I will never, as long as I could talk, communicate, I will never shut up about this disease. And people will say to me, well, how do you kick Alzheimer's ass? It's a disease. Well, I'll tell your audience how. Well, no matter what dementia you have or what illness you have, live your life. Do what you could do while you could still do it. Go out and have a good time. Celebrate every holiday, every occasion. Even if your loved one doesn't remember, you do, you celebrate. And I videoed Matt. I celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. He didn't know, he didn't remember. You can't take it personally. Celebrate anyway. And if they're in a facility, bring the party to them.
I love it. And you're so right on that. Even if they don't remember, you will. I'll remember for you that cliche, or like, why rob yourself of more time and more memories with your loved one by not celebrating things just because they don't remember it? We took my grandmother on vacation. She had Alzheimer's. We took her camping for a weekend. We did a long weekend camping. Celebrated my birthday that way. She had no idea what was going on. I doubt she remembered it. She didn't know where she was. She got agitated at times. There were difficult moments. But I have the memories. And some of the memories were funny and some of the memories were really sweet. But I have the memories of going in the pool with my grandmother that last time. Her getting pissed off at me, trying to put a nightgown on her and putting her nightgown on me and saying, F you, you wear this. Because and what do you do besides just laugh? That's all you can do. All right, you know what, Meme, just, if you want to lay down and sleep in your clothes. When she got up during the night, we changed her in her nightgown later, but we have that last memory of something fun that we did. She wasn't in her mind when we did this camping trip. But the rest of us were, and the rest of us remember it. And, same thing with my son. I don't know what he remembers, what he knows, or what he understands. He really can't communicate. And we're not sure on everything. We're not 100% confident. We do the things with him anyway, because we want the memories. So don't rob yourself of time and moments and events and milestones with your loved one just because they're unsure or they don't know or they don't understand. You can still have those. It's more precious. Do it anyway. Yeah, I love that message, Betsy. I just love it.
Yeah, definitely. Memories pop up on Facebook, and I could laugh, I cry, and I like to think, Sarah, that I'm a pioneer in doing this, because people would say to me, I see you taking Matt out, I'm going to take my spouse out. Or I see how you handle Matt's hallucinations, I learned from you. And I'm going to get verklempt. I'm really grateful that Matt's journey changed my life, made me a better person, and it can make you a better person. It's how you look at it, what you're going to do with it. And, people don't understand, I think, that hearing is the last sense to go when someone's dying. Unless, of course, they can't hear to begin with, but keep talking to your loved one. They know your love. There's such a deep connection. I had such a deep, unconditional love connection I never had before. this disease taught me with Matt. And I know that he heard me when he was dying. He heard us. And keep talking to your loved one. You know, I have a saying: dementia robs the brain; it cannot rob the heart of love. The heart knows love, and that they take with them. Maya Angelou has a saying: people always remember how you treated them, how you made them feel, and it's true. They will remember. And people say, well, why should I talk to them? They don't know who I am. You know who they are.
Exactly.
So talk to them. And I can't even believe that I do what I do, but it really Matt is the catalyst for why I do what I do. And I promised Matt when he was dying that I would continue on. So.
Well, I'm sure that he's watching over you and is very proud of you. I'm sure of that. That's one thing that I know in my heart, that he is very proud of you and you're doing amazing things. And I'm grateful to talk to you. And you are just so fun to talk to, and you're so spunky and fun. And I really enjoyed talking with you. And I just want to ask my second to last question. What is your favorite self-care technique?
Wow. What I used to do when I was caregiving, or you mean now?
Either way.
What I used to do when I was caregiving, I would go in the bathtub, take a bubble bath, listen to John Denver music to relax. What I do now is I still take my bath every night and listen to music, and sometimes I'll just go to the park. I'm a big kid. I go on a swing. Here I am, 64, going to be 65 in December, and I still like going on swings. So I'm a big kid. And just like even walk around the mall, or just doing something I enjoy doing.
Yeah. I love the swing thing, because we put an age on stuff that's fun. We say, oh, you can't you're too old to swing, like, society, not me. I would never say that. But Legos, I don't know if you've ever noticed on a box of Legos, it'll say from 9 to 99 or something like that, or like I think it's like from 5 years old to 99 years old with a little plus sign for Legos, because they're appropriate for everyone. And I think a swing set, maybe we need to put that little from 5 to 105 on the swing set, because I think everybody is nobody is you're just never too old to enjoy life. You're never too old to have fun. And I absolutely love that self-care tip, a swing set. I think that's great. I need to go to the park now. I'm going some swings.
It's
and then
it's really relaxing.
I can see it, because like the rocking back and forth, or even a hammock if you're too adult for a swing set, which will never be me. But if you're too adult, maybe a hammock might be appropriate, or something like that for you if you're not a swing person. But my final question for you, where can my audience find you?
Okay, I'm on Facebook. I have my own Facebook page, Betsy Wurzel, Wurzel. My podcast is on iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon Music. I'm also on LinkedIn. And that's where you could find me. And hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. Everyone's welcome to join if you're a caregiver, or even if you're not.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Betsy. It was really nice chatting with you. I look forward to hearing more from you and more of what you have going on in the future. So definitely keep in touch with us at Caregiver Chronicles. And that will wrap up this week's episode. Please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. If you listen and you want to give us a rating or a review, we would appreciate that. That helps us out tremendously. If you listen on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, or any platform that lets you give us a rating, review, a heart, or a thumbs up. We'd appreciate it. We do have a link to donate if you'd like to support our podcast monetarily with Buy Me a Coffee and Ko-Fi. Those will be in the description. Also, the link to all Betsy's episodes and Betsy's information will be in our show notes as well. But again, the best way to support our podcast is to like, share, subscribe. Definitely share us with a friend if there was something in this episode that resonates with you, or something in this episode you have a friend who needs to hear. And with that, we will see you next week.